My name's Bill and I'm an alcoholic, and this share is called A Borrowed. It may seem crazy to look back now and to remember all that I did to get drunk every day, but that was how I lived as an alcoholic, and that's the pull of alcoholism, where I would sit all day in school just looking and waiting, looking at the windows and waiting for each lesson to be over, where lessons slowly passed the time and friends would fill the hours until I could go out, get changed, go down to town and get drunk all over again. Alcohol was ultimately what I lived for, and I was only a young kid, maybe 14 years old. And the other thing I lived for was drinking as much as humanly possible, where drinking as much as possible became an art form to me, where drinking all that I could and still be standing up actually became the pinnacle of success. Other people play cricket, have hobbies, join the team, work for their exams. But unfortunately, my pinnacle of success was centred around drinking, where walking home when the world was going to work became almost normalised to me, where I would pass the milkman on his morning rounds. And I lived in a world that most people didn't. I lived in the twilight zone. And I was doing all this by my early teens, where anything could have happened to me, and unfortunately most things did. Little did I know then that 25 years later, the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous would, for me, take the place of a life lived on the edge. For it was in the rooms of AA that I was gifted with some knowledge of how to live my life sober, because I just never knew. And all that gift ultimately entailed was borrowing from the other sober members a little bit of information that I could put into my life that would change my actions, change my thoughts, and give me new choices. And as I changed, then I could pass all of that on to the next person. It's about passing on the baton, because ultimately that's all my recovery has ever been. Where as I pass through the rooms of AA, I pick up the steps, I put the steps into my life. But nothing is new in AA, and everything is recycled. I borrowed sayings, I borrowed tips, I borrowed some information, some advice, I've even borrowed some wisdom. I've had years of life-changing advice. I've had years of life-saving advice passed on to me, all being freely given as a gift, and being given that gift of life in AA becomes very normalised, but it still empowers me to go back for a little bit more every day. Recovery from any disease requires the body to recover. Recovering from alcoholism actually requires a lot more. It needs a complete turnaround in my spiritual principles. It needs my prayers to be honest. And a recovery would not be a recovery without my thirst for life being stronger than my thirst for dying. Sobriety is the world's best recycling plant, where what I think is new and exciting when I first got to the rooms of AA and everybody being on a pink cloud, everything has been passed down through generations that have gone before me. And as I in turn pass on this life-giving information to the next person. I then see the light go on in their eyes for the next person I help that other people saw in my eyes. Nothing is new in recovery. Nothing happens that hasn't happened 1,000 times before. And this is the light of a new life that appears where there was only once sorrow and degradation and heartbreaking nothingness. It took me decades to settle into my new life of living sober in AA. And in those years, I've begged and I've borrowed and I've accepted help. But there is one thing that's unique to each alcoholic in recovery that can't be passed on, nor that was ever borrowed, and it's this. It's that wonderful feeling when I wake up each morning, knowing that as long as I do as I'm told, if I work the 12-step recovery program, go to a few meetings, I can keep the gift of knowing that I don't have to borrow my happiness from others ever again in my life. As today, I can enjoy the peace and the happiness that AA has given me. A peace and a happiness I carry within myself to wherever I am in the world. Bill the Shirt, Bristol.